$21 billion is a lot of money. Yeah. Mr Hastie said this morning that when you make these sort of funding commitments, there are always trade-offs. So where will you make the savings? Where's the money coming from?
Well, Mark, during the course of COVID, we provided support with JobKeeper and JobSeeker and a number of other policies, and businesses like this would have benefited from that. It kept hundreds of thousands of people employed. But we didn't bake in that spending in those programs. They were there to address the issues of the time and the economic downturn of the time. Now, Australia is going through an incredibly difficult period under Labor. We know that we have had the biggest drop in living standards compared to any other developed country in the world. There has been almost 2 years of negative household growth, so households have been in recession. And what we've said is that we want to provide temporary assistance by way of the 25 cent a litre tax cut for fuel, the $1,200 back to people to help them deal with the here and now of Labor's cost of living crisis. But we're not baking that in year after year after year. What the government's done with their tax policy, in 15 months' time, they give 70 cents back per day. Now, as you know, that costs about $17 billion over the forward estimates, more than what we're proposing in relation to this policy. And in addition to that, there's about a $7 billion a year recurrent built-in cost in what they've proposed for the 70 cents a day. So we have no commitments in relation to that recurrent spend. And the reason, in part, that we've left to a later point in the campaign, the announcement, is to get a better understanding of where the finances are and how much money we can put into defence. It is incredibly important that we recognise, and I agree with the Prime Minister, that we live in a very uncertain time. When I was Defence Minister, and I've spoken publicly about this, as has Richard Marles, one of the most jolting things that I've ever experienced in my life was the briefing from our intelligence agencies about just how precarious this period is. So over the course of the next term of Parliament, we could see great uncertainty in our region, in Europe, in the Middle East. We could see a global recession. Now is not the time to risk Labor. We don't need a Labor Greens government in charge of defence and our economy at a time when we could be facing the most uncertain period in recent history. And that's why you'll always get a more stable government when it comes to the economy and national security under the coalition. And that's why we've been responsible in the amount of money that we've committed, which provides support to companies like this to grow. And there's enormous economic benefit in growing our economy by seeing these businesses grow as well. And that's what we're committed to. We'll come around to you.
Are you willing to name China as the reason for this spending boost?
Well, China is, as you know, and as the Prime Minister has pointed out, as Penny Wong has said, as Kim Beazley has said, and others, China under the CCP is a very different country and has ambitions in relation to Taiwan, and a naval blockade in the region is not out of the thinking of the defence experts. So let's be frank about it. So, but it's not just that. It's the fact that when you look at what's happening in Europe, the prospect of Russia emboldened going into countries beyond the Ukraine and Europe, like that has NATO countries deeply concerned at the moment. And as you know, in Germany and Italy and other countries, they're ramping up their defence investment. In Australia, the Labor Party's ripped $80 billion out of defence at a time they tell us that we should be trying to bolster our defences, and you don't achieve peace through weakness. And the trouble at the moment is that we've got a weak Prime Minister, which is why we've had bad economic policy. It's why we've got a very bad approach, frankly, at the moment under Richard Marles when it comes to defence. He's more interested in playing golf courses around the world than getting a better understanding of what it is that we need to do as a country. And he's had no capacity at all, even though he's taken proposals to Cabinet to get them funded. He's been rolled by Penny Wong and others, and unfortunately it's our diggers who miss out. At the next election, Australians have the choice between two very different sides of this debate. If they elect a coalition government, they'll have Andrew Hastie, a former digger, a member of the SAS no less, as the Defence Minister of this country. And that, I think, is exactly what our country needs in a time of great uncertainty. We'll just come at the back and then we'll come across. Yes, mate.
Sorry, Senator Reynolds, you've been a critic of defence procurement and the culture within defence. I think you said you felt sick reading an ANAO report into procurement. What's the point of throwing another $21 billion at defence if they can't even get their own act together on procurement?
I'll just make a comment and then throw to Linda. As you would have seen in the announcement today, we put together a separate commission. So I accept the criticism, and I think Linda's spot on in terms of some of the comments that she's made, that we want to make sure that money is being spent efficiently. When you speak to companies who are involved in defence contracts, they're pulling their hair out because it takes too long. There are all sorts of bureaucratic processes in place, and we want to make sure that we can bring industrialists in who have managed big projects and make sure that we get not just more money, but a more efficient spend of that money so that we can make every taxpayer dollar go further. So that when we want to acquire drones, when we want to acquire guided weapon systems, when we want to invest into our submarines, when we want to fund AUKUS, don't forget the government hasn't contributed $1 to AUKUS. Not $1 additional has been put into the defence budget, which is why the morale is so bad, because Navy and Army and Air Force are all seeing their programs cannibalised. And that's the reality of Labor. So I'll hand over to Linda.
Thanks, Peter. And it is a great question. And this is one of the many reasons I'm so supportive of the approach that Peter and Andrew are taking together on national security. It's not just about buying the capability itself and making sure that is delivered in a timely way, but we also need to have the plan, which we do, and we always have had the plan to make sure that we have the trained people who can operate the equipment, we have the sustainment and the resources, and we have the actual capability to deliver. And part of that, as you have identified, is making sure that the Department of Defence itself is functional and is capable of delivering that capability. And this government, to their enduring shame, has not only taken away, as you heard, the $80 billion away from defence in all of the enabling capabilities, they are eroding our defence at the time we need it. So it is not just about the capability in the platforms, it is ensuring this country has the capability to deter and also to defend ourselves. And that is exactly what the coalition government is again offering and will deliver if elected.
One for Mr. Hastie.
Yeah, sure.
Could I ask you, do you think women should serve in combat roles in the ADF?
Yeah, the coalition policy is that all combat roles are open to women. It's been our long-standing position. I've been in this role for almost 5 years, 18 months as the Assistant Minister for Defence, 3 years now as the Shadow Minister for Defence, and our coalition policy is that all combat roles are open to women. The one thing that we will insist on is high standards, because in combat there's no points for second place. So we need to be able to win every fight that we go into, and that's why we'll uphold high standards. Thank you.
Are you saying that women have lower standards? Is that what you're saying?
Hardly. It's hardly what I'm saying. I'm saying we have one standard. All Australians, regardless of your background, your race, your sexuality, your gender, your religion, every single role in the ADF is open to you. And we want more Australians to join. So I signalled this last week to the Secretary of Defence and the Chief of the Defence Force. And so I've made it very clear about our policy going forward. And, this is the thing about Richard Marles. Talks a big game, talks about the most dangerous strategic circumstances since the end of the Second World War, and he uses women in the ADF as a political prop. As a political prop. And I think it's a shameful scare campaign that he's running on this. And I stand by my record. Like I said yesterday on ABC Radio, I worked in the ADF for 12 years, 8 months, and I worked with women all the time. In fact, I did the first close quarter battle integrated course with females at the end of 2011. Live fire, counter-terrorism drills down at Swanbourne. I was taught surveillance and counter-surveillance by women, very, very good at what they do. I was an instructor on the first integrated SAS selection course where we had females come through. So to take a lecture from Richard Marles, I mean, it's below the belt, really, what he's saying, and that's what I said 7 years ago.
So I mean, changed your personal view, but you said it, right?
I did say it, and I'm not going to disown who I was 7 years ago. Again, personal experience. When I think about some of the things I had to do in a close combat unit up at Bindoon, not far from here, live fire drills where you practice a man down, very aerobically intensive. You need fine motor skills. You're firing live rounds. I remember picking up an 85-kilo mate with my pack and webbing and my legs buckling. Now, I did that in training, but I worked with men who did that under fire in combat for a fallen mate. So I'm not going to resile from what I've said in the past. You want honesty and you want integrity from politicians. I said what I said. But the thing that the Australian people need to know that under a Dutton-led coalition government, we will have a policy that is open to all Australians for combat roles. Nothing is changing. This is Richard Marles playing politics with the ADF, playing politics with women in the ADF and using them as political props, and it's shameful.
It just sounds like from that answer that you still think women aren't strong enough Is that right, that women aren't strong enough to deal with that sort of combat you described?
Is that what you're saying? No, I didn't say that at all. I said I got asked a question and I referred to my personal experience. Never once have I indicated that the policy should change, and as I've said, judge me by my record for the last 5 years.
Sorry, do you not believe in your own policy then? If that's your personal belief, with a coalition policy, it's something different?
I'm standing right here saying there's one policy. I mean, this is kind of student politics stuff. I'm ready to be the Minister for Defence of this country, and we have the most dangerous strategic circumstances since the end of the Second World War. Peter takes that seriously, I take that seriously, Michaelia takes that seriously, Linda takes that seriously, Mick takes it seriously. And so we're focusing on increasing our defence spend, we're focusing on bringing lethal capabilities so we can deter our enemies. And you're getting caught up on a comment from 7 years ago, which doesn't even have any bearing on the current policy setting. So I've dealt with it, I've answered the question, we're going to move on. Thank you.
Can I have one more to Mr Hayes on a different topic? Okay. Mr Dutton.
The F-35s are going to cost...
Can I ask a question? Thank you, Mr Dutton. You have previously said that Australia should not contribute to the coalition of the willing because there will be no US security presence or blanket. But as you know, as a former Defence Minister, Australia has contributed to heaps of peacekeeping missions that have not involved US presence. They include Israel, which is ongoing, Cyprus and Mozambique are two other examples. So why is it a deal breaker for you when it comes to Ukraine if you are not siding with Margot?
Well, one of my proudest moments as Defence Minister was to stand with the Ukrainian ambassador at Amberley Air Base and see off the first of the Bushmasters. We took a decision very early in government that we were going to strongly support and back Ukraine, and I think it's something that all Australians should be proud of, to be honest. We saved lives with the Bushmasters and with the capability that we were building at the time. I'm opposed to us sending in an ill-defined way, to an ill-defined mission, our troops on the border with a nuclear-powered country like Russia, with a lunatic in charge of Russia, not knowing what would happen next. The Prime Minister hadn't thought about it. He hadn't discussed it with the CDF. He hadn't discussed it with the Minister for Defence. And the next day, the Minister for Defence and the Assistant Minister for Defence walked it back. The Prime Minister hasn't spoken of it since then. We support...
The question is about showing up. As your own Shadow Defence Minister said, the lesson of Ukraine is about being able to stand on your own 2 feet until your allies come to help. What kind of ally are we if we don't come to help?
We provided more than any other country when we were in government. This government pulled back, and the reason that we're not supplying at the levels that we did when the coalition was in government was because this government has required defence to pay for what they contribute to Ukraine.
But I'm talking about coalition.
No, we're talking about our contribution to Ukraine, about being a friend and being there, as you point out. I take it very seriously because we are a great friend of Ukraine, but I'm not going to put the lives of Australian soldiers at risk without understanding anything of what is being asked. And the Prime Minister has nothing before him which indicates what it is that is being asked of our troops.
At the table while that's being negotiated.
But for how long will our troops be required to stay in Europe? We're told by the Prime Minister that we live in our region, in the Indo-Pacific, in the most dangerous period since 1945. And he's talking about sending hundreds or thousands of troops, I don't know, he doesn't know, into Europe, when we should be working with our allies in the Pacific and we should be working on building our capabilities up. We have a record low investment in defence under Labor, and we're talking about diverting what would be billions of dollars from the defence budget into sustaining our effort in Europe. Now, that is not the approach of a prudent Prime Minister who understands national security.
If you get some of those questions, if you get some of those questions answered, would you, from Keir Starmer, say, would you be willing to change your mind?
I've dealt with that issue.
I don't think you have, respectfully. Would you be willing to change your mind, Mr Dutton?
I've stated our position.
Mr Dutton, the vulnerability of WA's northwest coast, there's no manned permanent bases up there. Under your government, will there be a permanent base to protect the vulnerability of the economically sensitive coast?
Well, I've said before that the north and the northwest of our country is both a vulnerability and an opportunity for us to project our force to the north and to the west if necessary. And investment across the top of Australia is absolutely essential. And we did that when we were in government. So this announcement today, which is a record announcement into defence of $21 billion, is not only going to get us to 2.5% of GDP, it's going to allow us to invest into companies like this. It's going to allow us to invest in our defences across the north. It's going to allow us to invest in our counter aerial surveillance capabilities. It's going to allow us to invest into autonomous vehicles, both on land and underwater, and it's going to allow us to support and build the Australian Defence Force. And under Mr Albanese, no money additional in the budget, just confirmation that they're ripping $80 billion out of defence. And at this election, Australians know that over the next few years there could be a significant global event in Europe, in the Middle East, elsewhere. There could be conflict in our own region. We don't know, and that's why.
Do they need to be permanent bases in the northwest rather than stand-up?
We can look at the advice from Defence at the time, but I've been very strongly supportive of us increasing our fuel reserves and making sure that our capabilities are as strong as they can be in our northern and our northwestern approaches. So we should work more closely with the United States and see what further investment can be made by the US in the top end, and they're certainly of the view that that is an opportunity for them. They don't want a Pearl Harbor in Guam. They want to make sure that their assets are spread, and Australia is a natural ally and partner.
Mr Dutton, on the defence spending announcement you've made today, precisely what capabilities are you going to spend that money on? Are we talking armed drones, integrated air and missile defence? Also, previously you've said that you believe it's inconceivable that Australia would not join the US and defend Taiwan if China invaded. Do you still stand by that?
So a couple of points. I mean, firstly, in relation to where we are at the moment, we're putting a record amount of money into defence, which allows us the options that aren't there at the moment. And that's why of the 30,000 businesses that have closed over the last 3 years under this government, a number of them, too many of them, have been in the defence material sector. And that's just the reality of a Labor government. By taking money out, by cancelling contracts, by pushing everything out past the forward estimates to use their dodgy calculations, that has really had a huge blow on businesses here in WA. And what we announced today is a massive investment into Western Australia. It'll create jobs, it'll create economic benefit for WA and the permanent stable jobs that Andrew spoke of before. Now, in relation to the United States, Kim Beazley's pointed this out as well. We have an enduring and incredibly important relationship with the United States. We have obligations in relation to ANZUS and in relation to AUKUS, and it's the policy of both governments to honour the principles of ANZUS and of AUKUS. So we ultimately look at what is in our country's best interests, and we'll act in our country's best interest to defend us, to keep us safe, and to make sure that our neighbours stay safe as well. You don't do that in a position of weakness. Anthony Albanese is a weak leader, and the Australian Defence Force knows it, our allies and our adversaries know it, and what we're demonstrating today is that we have the strength of leadership, and that if there is a change of government at the next election, you won't have Richard Marles touring the world's golf courses on a VIP with his mates. You'll have a former member of the SAS of our country, the most elite of our fighters in our country, as the Defence Minister. And I think that should be a very clear message to Australians that this is another reason to vote out a bad government and to vote in a good coalition government.
Can you nominate any specific capabilities that this spending uplift will deliver?
Drone capability, guided weapons, which we invested into, that this government pulled money out of, our munitions and our capability across most platforms, including frigates. All of that becomes a reality again. Our cyber defences, where Labor's pulled money out, but we're not announcing procurement contracts from opposition as which would be something we're not able to do without that advice. But they're the capabilities that we need to invest in. That's the advice I received as Defence Minister. They're the investment decisions that we made. The 4th Squadron of the F-35s, absolutely essential to make sure that we can keep our borders safe, and we take defence very seriously.
There's a view among some of your colleagues, Mr Dutton, that big policies like this and the mortgage deductibility plan should have been announced months earlier. 500,000 people voted yesterday. A lot of people have made their minds up. Why did you not announce this late last year to actually get it to sink into the public's mind? And just on the spending, it's huge spending going forward. Does this kill off your kind of aspiration you floated last week to index income tax?
No, it doesn't. And coalition governments, as the Howard government and the Abbott government, others demonstrated, you can manage the economy, you can invest into defence, you can provide the essential services. I mean, the fact is that bulk billing is down in WA by 15% under Mr Albanese. Now, if you listen to his ads and his Mediscare campaign, you'd think that bulk billing rates had gone up.
That's got nothing to do with it.
Well, it does actually, because there's a huge expense involved in those essential services. So my point is that you can manage the economy well, you can invest into the essential services, including health and education and defence. Education doubled under us. The spending doubled in education. The spending doubled in relation to childcare, for example, and other areas under a coalition government, but we were still able to invest at a record level in defence. And that's exactly what we should do. Now, in terms of timing, I think it would have been imprudent for us to announce early on, without knowing the bottom line and how much money was in the budget, to make that announcement then. And we have taken the more prudent approach. People can argue the politics of it, but the more prudent approach was to see what the bottom line looked like, to make sure that we weren't promising funny money. It's a promise that we are committed to. We are absolutely serious about defence, as we demonstrated in government. And Andrew Hastie, as the Defence Minister, I think will be the most well-credentialed in recent history, and he will make sure that we invest into defence where Labor has pulled money out. And the men and women of the Australian Defence Force, I think, would be standing there applauding that.
Mr Dutton, I haven't heard you say where the money's coming from. Where are you getting the cash from?
So we're not, just to go into a bit more detail of what I provided before, the recurrent spend, as you'd understand, that means that you're locking spending in every year into the budget. We're not going ahead with that 70 cent a week tax cut, 70 cent a day tax cut, which comes to about $7 billion a year ongoing. So when we talk about $12 billion over the forward estimates, Labor's locking in spending of $7 billion a year, which is $28 billion over the forward estimates, and $17.4 billion just over this 4-year period. So we well and truly deal with the expenditure side of it, and we've been very clear about that.
Mr Dutton, basically what you're saying is that you're paying for this policy by repealing income tax cuts. So you're paying for this policy through bracket creep and slugging ordinary taxpayers rather than spending restraint and finding cuts elsewhere.
No,
doesn't that undermine your aspiration for lower taxes?
A great coalition government will always be better on national security and economic management, and that's exactly what's on offer at this election. If you want to deal with the house of living crisis, vote out this government, for goodness sake. Electricity's gone up by 32%, gas is up by 34%, food's up by 30%, and it's going to go higher. The one thing you can believe the Prime Minister on, out of all the lies he's told, the one thing he is telling the truth about is that if he's voted back in, all of those costs will go up higher. They'll go up even...
rise rather than a spending cut.
They'll go up even higher. What we're saying is that we want to help families who are struggling because of Labor's cost of living crisis. We're going to do that by a 25 cent a litre reduction in the excise tax that a family is paying, or a small business or a pensioner is paying. That will be a savings of $14 a week for, per car. For a 2-car family, $28 a week, much better than 70 cents a day in a tax cut in 15 months' time. In addition to that, we commit to giving people $1,200 back of their own money through a tax rebate, much more generous than the 70 cents a day, and that's the interim solution. That's the short-term, immediate support we provide to families. The next stage of our plan is to fix up this dreadful renewables-only policy which has driven up the cost of everything. And by bringing in place our gas reservation, similar to what operates on the West Coast, we can bring down the cost of wholesale gas by 23%, which means you're paying less for electricity at home. It means that you're paying less for electricity and gas to produce bricks and aluminium and steel for construction, and that's how we can bring the costs across down.
Temporary, but this would be a permanent increase in income taxes that you're suggesting to fund this.
We've addressed in terms of what we can do to provide support now, which is the 25 cent a litre cut in the excise tax. So petrol comes down under us. You get more of your tax back, $1,200, and that helps you with the cost of living crisis that Labor's created. We're getting young people into housing, and importantly today, we're talking about defence as a priority of a future Liberal government, whereas they're ripping $80 billion off under Labor. So we'll always be the party of keeping our country safe, of managing the economy effectively, and that's exactly what we've done.
Can I just ask one follow-up question? Are you doing this in response to Donald Trump suggesting that countries like Australia should increase their GDP, the share of GDP defence spend to 3%?
I mean, you'll remember that Kim Beazley called for 3% of GDP to be spent on defence.
But Donald Trump has done that recently within the last 12 months.
This election is between Anthony Albanese and I.
Yep.
If you want to vote for a weak Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese ticks that box. He has near destroyed the economy over the last 3 years. He wasted $500 million on The Voice. He divided our country. He's jacked up the cost of everything, and Australians can't afford 3 more years of a bad government. We, on the other hand, will manage the economy well. We'll get the cost of living crisis contained and put downward pressure on prices. And importantly, we will keep our country safe, and that's what we're doing.
Are you going to rely on higher taxes to fund 3% of GDP by the end of the decade? Where is the money going to come from for that?
No, we're not. Well, again, just back to the point about the recurrent spend that Labor's building into the budget. That's each and every year. We don't have that spend.
3% is a lot of money over the decade. How will you fund that?
But again, we're not signing up to Labor's recurrent spend, and we'll have more. No. What we'll do is we'll have more to say in relation to our costings before the election. And Labor last time released it on the Thursday before, which I'm sure you were critical of at the time. I don't recall it, but I'm sure you were. So we'll deal with it before the election.
Mr. Dutton, I just had a question for...
What's your question?
I just had a question for yourself and Mr. Hastie potentially on recruitment and retention. I was wondering if you could be a bit more specific about sort of what you had in mind to fix it. Is it possibly like a boost to the pay for defence personnel or more contracts for the firms that handle recruitment?
It's certainly pay and condition, but it's also the sense of purpose, and people want to work hard in defence. They don't want to work on projects that are going nowhere. And Labor's put money out of those projects. We want to put the money back in so that we can support those families, those defence families, and keep people in the defence jobs for longer.
Especially with recruitment, Especially with recruitment, do you think that this is a problem that money can solve alone?
Well, I think the two are interrelated, is the point I'd make. So I think it's about purpose and sense of purpose and being involved in work which is meaningful. At the moment, people have lost faith in this government.
Don't voters have a right to know exactly what that $21 billion is going to buy?
Well, again, I don't think there's a country in, there's a government in our history that's been elected outlining what contracts they'll sign in relation to defence. We've spoken about the areas, the guided weapons, etc., the capability acquisition. All of that is what we need to acquire. The decisions about who we purchase from is not something that we make from opposition.